Now available in paperback and e-readers. Isis, Bride of Dracula. Goddess Next Door and John Haynes team up to take on the dark vampire in this action-packed Isis series adventure. Get Isis, Bride of Dracula in paperback and e-readers at online booksellers today. A couple of weeks ago, Disney launched its Disney Plus streaming service. And many were excited for Disney Plus because it allowed them an opportunity to see every Disney animated movie feature and to see stuff like almost the entire catalog of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, almost all of the Star Wars movies, not to mention old TV shows like The Simpsons, X-Men 1992, and many older shows which have not been seen on broadcast television for years. However, when I take a critical examination of the Disney Plus streaming service, I don't see much value for the dollar. When you get past all of the nostalgia for all of the classic shows that people from previous generations watch, there isn't much fresh content on Disney Plus. And that's the big problem with Disney Plus, is that it's primarily focused on nostalgia and viewers watching content from the past, and your Bob Iger has not really focused much on the future. Now, your Bob Iger primarily put so much money into Disney Plus because he felt he was losing market share to Netflix, and he thought that because Netflix had so many people buying the service, he needed to create a service in order to bring profits over to Disney. Unfortunately, what he doesn't understand is that content is king when it comes down to the internet, and what he has done is shallowed the pool as related to content. Now, this isn't the first time the Big Six have shallowed the pool as related to content. They started doing this back in 1996 when they created the Telecommunications Bill of 1996, which was passed by a Republican Congress and then signed by then President Bill Clinton. And that bill led to people being able to own more than one television station and newspaper and magazine in a local area, and corporations began buying up TV stations, radio stations, newspapers, and magazines, and consolidating media. So we wound up eventually by the year 2000 with 6 companies running most of the media and controlling most of the media. And in 2019, we now have 5 companies controlling all of that media now that Disney has purchased Fox. So you have a shallower pool of content, and with a shallower pool of content, you don't have many content providers providing content or competing with each other to provide content. So this, combined with TV going digital in 2009, has led to the pool of content not only getting more shallow, but it has also led to the pool getting stagnant. And the pool got really shallow in 2009 when TV went digital, because we started to see that in addition to the main TV channels and the cable channels out there, a lot of the TV networks began offering sub-channels like Cozy TV, Antenna TV, Movies, and Decades. And with the addition of these sub-channels on many of the television networks, what this did was it diluted the audience even further, and because it gave the audience way more options. And a lot of those options wound up encroaching on the main network's ratings. So a lot of these TV networks, when TV went digital, they wound up losing ratings, and they wound up losing ratings to their sub-channels, and that wound up doing major damage to the TV networks. And the same thing is happening to Disney Plus, because with the deal they had with Netflix, they were actually paying Netflix to put their programs on their platform, and they were actually benefiting because by syndicating that media on a Netflix platform, they were making they were getting more exposure for their films and content. But because Bob Iger thought he could make more money by creating his own platform, he thought, oh, I'll take all of the Disney content off Netflix, create my own platform, and the same thing with Warner Brothers and the DC Universe platform, and with what they want to do with HBO Max. But what they are actually doing, again, is the same thing that they did with TV when it went digital in 2009, in diluting the platform and encroaching on other platforms. So instead of the audience finding content, what they're doing is these companies are encroaching on their already established markets with these streaming services. And instead of there being large audiences for that content, most of it is a really shallow pool of content. And a lot of that content is directed towards nostalgia and towards older viewers who grew up with older content like old Disney movies, old Star Wars, and even, at this point, older MCU movies. And this content that they're putting on Disney Plus is depreciating in value because it is already older content, and it is, again, targeted towards older audiences. However, in order for an internet platform to succeed, you have to have fresh content, and this is the big problem with this Disney Plus streaming service, is that there isn't much fresh new content. And in order for a platform like Netflix to grow, what made Netflix grow was all of the fresh content they were getting, like Luke Cage, like Cannon Busters, like Daredevil, like The Punisher, and many other shows. It was that fresh content that allowed Netflix to grow, but Disney really has not focused too much on fresh content. They're looking to bring people in with the nostalgia, but when you launch a network, you have to have fresh content, and this is going to be, I believe, the undoing of many of these streaming services like Disney Plus and like DC Universe and HBO Max, because when you have an extremely shallow pool of content and a focus on heavily on older content, then there is no focus on creating the new content that brings in the new viewers. So I look at this whole Disney Plus, and yes, short term they got 10 million subscribers, but I don't believe they are going to be able to retain many of those subscribers based on what I saw transpire with Cozy TV and Antenna TV and many of the sub-channels, because once people got to see all of their favorite old shows after the first run, they then got bored with the channel and stopped watching the channel. So after they got finished watching their favorite old shows, then they left the channel, and then the big problem was they kept rerunning a lot of this old content, and unfortunately the new viewers didn't really come in. And then when they tried to bring in new shows, a lot of the newer shows didn't really catch on like the older shows that came from the nostalgia factor. The newer shows that they brought in, like on Cozy TV, for example, which started out with shows like $6 Million Man, Bionic Woman, Make Room for Daddy, and Charlie's Angels, and Starsky and Hutch. By the third wave, after they had finished running Starsky and Hutch and Knight Rider, that's when Cozy TV went from a fun nostalgia channel with old classic shows to a very lame channel right now, which now runs almost 4 or 5 hours of Frasier, and 4 and 5 hours of The Nanny, and 4 and 5 hours of The Office. And that's not what people come to a nostalgia channel for, seeing blocks of shows that come from the 1990s. They came from those shows from the 70s and the 80s and the 60s and the 50s, but because we don't get to see those shows, what happens is people walk away from the service. And what your Disney has done is front loaded its service with all of these old shows. And now that once people finish seeing all of those old shows, they're going to want to walk away from the service. And even worse, a lot of the stuff that they have on there, it was pretty mediocre to begin with. I mean, yes, there are some great things on there that people haven't seen in years, like Gargoyles or the X-Men '92 or any of the old classic Disney movies. But when you look at the service, it doesn't have much depth in terms of content. And when you don't have depth in terms of content, what happens is the audience winds up walking away. And with all of these streaming services diluting the pool of content, making it more and more shallow, it's going to be hard for those streaming services to sustain themselves in the long term. Because again, on the internet, content is king, and fresh content is how a website stays alive. If you don't have fresh content on your website, you are not going to be able to stay around for long. Because I know this from experience of running a blog for over 11 years, and if you don't have fresh, new content, people aren't going to visit your website. You're not going to get the clicks. You're not going to get the revenue. And I look at Bob Iger's decision with Disney Plus, and it was something that he should have really thought about as related to the long term. Because yes, short term, it'll get a lot of eyeballs on it, but long term, it's not going to last much longer, because if you don't have really strong content on the website to keep people interested, and most importantly, new concepts to get people interested, then the website is going to wind up losing its numbers. That's why I said Disney Plus may start seeing declines in a year or so, because they've got a lot of old content but no focus on developing brand new content. And the new content that they have is very small, when they should have started to come out with a larger catalog of new content and actually come out with content that is brand new, not stuff tied to old franchises and old material. They need to start coming out of the gate with fresh stuff to start to appeal to millennials, Generation Z, so that they can have their own characters, their own stories, and stuff based on their experiences, because that's the stuff that will build the network's longevity, and that's the stuff that will keep the network going on much longer. Because Disney Plus, as a streaming service, they are focused on the short game, but anybody who's a visionary understands you need to focus on the long game. And the long game is focused not only on making shows related to Star Wars like The Mandalorian, or MCU shows like Falcon and Winter Soldier. It is focused on developing fresh and original concepts for the streaming service, stuff that no one has seen before from new creators, and bringing that to the platform, because that's going to be the bread and butter that allows you to build the platform long term. Because yes, the nostalgia will bring people in, but you have to have fresh concepts that keep people watching. If you'd like to try some of my SJS Direct publications, like the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, the John Haynes series, The Temptation of John Haynes, and the Spinsterella trilogy, you may do so by clicking the link to Amazon.com in the description box. And if you want to help me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the link in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and coming to Kindle Unlimited, John Haynes, Dark Succubus. The man who rules the world is tempted by a sultry succubus in this all-new John Haynes series adventure. Get John Haynes, Dark Succubus in paperback or pre-order on Kindle Unlimited today.